Okay, so I'm Jackie Taylor, organizer of the Psychology Women's Ride Series, and we're having a required safety clinic tonight. We've got many ladies with us tonight. Maybe just give a shout out on your first names, starting here.
Patty Rod.
Nice and loud.
Patty Rod. Debbie Richmond.
Debbie Gregory. Ingrid Gregory. Katie Seltzer, yes.
Brenda Grindstaff.
Brenda Grindstaff. Donna, yes.
Lindsay Clark.
Lindsay, Karen, Ann, Trish Turner, Karen,
Janine
Janine,
Guns. Debbie Montgomery.
Debbie, and you guys don't count.
I've already wrecked my bike. I'm off the list.
Some of us learn the hard way sometimes,
I've learned the hard way.
and it's unavoidable. So the way this is going to work is today we're going to talk through ride safety. Okay, so this is obviously a cornerstone of the Psychology Women's Ride Series, because we get together to ride to have fun, right? We don't get together to ride and then have somebody go to the ER or take an ambulance trip or injure themselves or get bit by a dog. But inevitably, sometimes accidents happen, so we need to be prepared. So I've got several handouts here. If you didn't get them, maybe...
We ran out of these.
which ones were they?
The one that put bikes on them.
Oh, okay. Huh.
But we have
Okay.
one more set made for somebody that doesn't have any.
Okay.
It's a full set. That's
Okay.
a full set.
Okay, awesome. So there's a full set here if nobody has. Okay, maybe you two could share until afterwards, and then there's more handouts here, and the one that's missing I'll print. Okay, so some of you brought your helmets.
Oh, were we supposed to?
No, that's okay. No, you weren't. So, some things I want to talk about. The first thing, obviously, is our noggins, right? We don't want to injure our noggins. And so helmets are made to protect them. There's some with what Trek calls MITS technology, or other brands, something similar, that help absorb shock in a way that rotates to help minimize brain concussion. So I unfortunately am familiar with brain concussions the hard way. Once from cycling and once from just walking on some black ice and not realizing it. So the most important thing about the helmet, two important things about the helmet, is a snug fit. And it's one of the most common things I see, that people just on a ride, in the middle of a ride, they don't have it adjusted right. So I'm going to put mine on real quick, and somebody can tell me if I even have mine not adjusted correctly, because these straps kind of slide over time. So when you put it on, is there someone who can turn off the music, please? Thanks. You want it so that you have only like two fingers. Like, you don't want it to tilt back like this, because sometimes that happens if it's not fit snug, and if it's not tightened down, or if it's windy and the wind from riding, it'll scooch back. So you want it to cover your forehead and protect the frontal lobes of your brain. So about like this. So you should be able to, if you look up high enough, you should be able to barely see the edge of your helmet. And then when you buckle it down, here we go. Thank you, whoever got it nice and quiet in here. Charles, thank you. You want it to, the Y for your helmet, I might be a little twisted here. There's usually a dial in back where you can snug it comfortably. You don't want it to be painful. You'll know it's painful because you'll start to get a headache while you're riding if you've got it too tight. And that depends too, if you're wearing a headband, that absorbs some space. So you just got to fool with it. But this part, you want it to be a Y just underneath your earlobe. So I don't know, I should have wore a hair rubber band, but just underneath here. You don't want it down here, these two things, these two clips. So you'll need to fool with it if it's not the case. So I think mine might be okay. You also want to be able to put a couple of fingers here. This is where mine slides, this little buckle here. So now and then I have to go back and tighten it a little bit. I'm not going to do it now and waste time here. But, so you take it off. You want to check that every now and then. You don't want it too tight because then you'd be choked, but just enough, a half an inch or so, where you can slide your fingers in. Snug it down. Kind of move your head around. If it's not moving, then when you go down, it's going to be where it needs to be to protect you. So we'll adjust these more on April 2nd when we have our first ride. And I do want to back up a minute to say that this is going to be more like a part one of our safety. So because of the hour, it's going to get dark soon. And plus two, it's a week and a half to our first ride. So how much are we actually going to retain in practice? So before our ride on April 2nd, we'll have our bikes with us, put our helmets on, and we'll practice some of these things. We'll demonstrate them, and then you all will get to try it out. And then we'll practice those things some more on our first ride together. So there's helmet. And then the second thing you want to make sure is a good bike fit. Now, the word good I use kind of loosely. A good bike fit is when you see a professional to have your bike fit for your body like hand in glove. But when you first get your bike, you want to make sure first you bought one that is your size. And then when you stand over it, the top tube, I know if you want to stand up and see, you want at least a couple of inches on a road bike of clearance, from your top tube to your body. If you're on a mountain bike, you want 3 to 4 inches because you're riding rough terrain. And if you come down off your pedals, you don't want to, hurt yourself. So, so that's how you know that. And then in terms of the pedal and the saddle height, you want to, now I don't have shorts on obviously, and I don't have my shoes on, and I don't want to fall either, but you want to be able to have a slight bend in your knee. If you have too much of a bend in your knee, it's going to put, over time, it's going to put strain on your knee. And then your knee will start aching after a bike ride. You'll be like, why does my knee hurt? Well, maybe the bike fit is not exactly the way it should be. Maybe your saddle needs to come up or down. But ultimately, if you really want a good bike fit, you go see a bike fit specialist. And ours here, Eddie Sloan, he'll block off 4 hours of the day. You may not need 4 hours, but he's giving you 4 hours of his time, and he will check everything. When I first bought this bike, I had to get a shorter stem, I had to get different handlebars because they were made more for somebody with the broader shoulders, with the arms out here, to kind of keep everything in line. And when he was done, it just feels like hand in glove. It's amazing. It's like night and day difference. You won't even recognize the bike. You'll be like, this bike is now made for me, as it is. It's fit for you. So I highly recommend Bike Fit. But in terms of safety, that's important because if it doesn't fit you, it's going to cause problems for you potentially when you're on the road. You don't want to have an accident because something's wrong with your fit. And also you want to go through the ABCs of a bike safety check like Ernie talked with us about last week. And if you couldn't make it last week, I have a handout, I think.
That's the one that run out.
This one, yes, ABC bike safety check. So you're going to do things like you're going to make sure you've got air in your tires. Air it up the night before, especially if it's been sitting over winter, because if it loses all of its air overnight, it can get a pinch flat in your garage, just sitting there. So I've had that happen before. Brakes, test your brakes, make sure that they brake evenly, not one goes in all the way and the other doesn't. They need to brake evenly, both of them. See, your cassette and your chain, spin it through, make sure everything works and it's not making a lot of noises. Drop it and make sure there's nothing unusual happening. And your quick release. So even though you may not put your bike in the back seat of your car and take off the wheel, even if you use a rack, over time, that skewer that runs through your wheel could come loose, over time, just over miles riding, it can come loose. So you want to make sure it's snug, finger tight. You don't want to wrench it down so you can never take the lever off again. But at the same time, you don't want it so loose that your front wheel is wobbling in its drops. So there's that. But let's see. So, but more to new stuff that we have not discussed yet is communication and etiquette. And there's a handout here. All of these things I will also email and post in our Facebook group so that people have it. This one I borrowed from a different bike club, and I modified it a little bit for ours. These are just some different commands that we might use on a women's ride, because one of the most important things for safety is communication, and especially if you're soft-spoken or you know, you just got to put your teacher voice on, or whatever people call it, to really say these things loud when a car is coming. Car up, car back, slowing, stopping. What are some other common ones? On your left. So if if a car is passing on the left, you could say car passing or car around, or on the left to indicate that you're passing on the left. What else?
Pothole.
Pothole or hole, or if it's rough pavement, you know, you could say rock, or, you know.
Usually just point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
and
we do.
and if you feel comfortable pointing, some people don't. If it's so rough that you don't want to take your hands off of your handlebars, that's okay. Just make sure you can say whole right or whole left, or, you know, you can use your hand and show like this to indicate debris. Dog. Dog, yes. And in some instances, bear, right? Yes.
We've encountered that.
Yes, me too. On a road bike I have a few times. So debris. Gapping is another good one. So when we're riding in a group, it's a lot different than riding by yourself. And if some people are falling back and the group's starting to split into two, the ride person in front, the ride guide, whoever's in front, may not know that. And they're setting the pace. So you need to just say that, you know, gapping, and then they'll be like, oh, okay, because those little mirrors, you know, you can't see that far back where you can see everybody. It's just a tiny mirror meant to see cars coming. So, you know, you might want to say gapping, or hey, you know, Susan's falling back, or we're dropping so-and-so, unintentionally, obviously, because we don't ride in groups to drop people. You know, and then left, right, you know, and you point, right? So, you know, point to the right if you're going right. Some people do this or whatever. Whatever, I just point. You know, drivers, just make it easy for them, right? Rolling, or rolling or going. So when we stop at a stop sign and then we start again, we can say going or rolling, stopping. Walker up, like if somebody's walking or walking their dog. You know, if you're waiting for the light to change, you could say green or red light, or slowing, stopping, and then green. Take the lane is another good one. So we're going to talk more about taking the lane. So when you're riding, and when we get into bike law, we'll talk about staying as far to the right as feasible without riding in the shoulder or the ditch or the gutter or whatever it is. You know, you don't want to be so close to that white line. It's a common mistake of beginners. They want to hug that edge. Well, if you stay so far over to the right, a car's going to think, oh, I can get by, you know, and then try to pass you and not give you the 3 feet space that the law says that they should. And then where are you? I mean, most of the county roads are not wide enough to be 2-lane, let alone 2-lane and give you 3 feet, you know. So you want to ride, I like to put myself, if you imagine where a car's tire tracks would go, where that right tire would go, about 1/3 of the way in from the white line or the imaginary white line that should be there that's not, so that you have an escape. If you need to move over because somebody's passing you and they're not giving you the space you need, you've got that fluctuation, you've got that setback for yourself. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. But so let's see, common terms. So take the lane. So with take the lane, we do that a lot when the traffic's busy. Like if we go up to Tremont, and you get to the Y, and then you turn right, like you're heading up towards Cades Cove, and then there's a left on Tremont. There's about a 1/4 mile section where it's busy. People are wanting to go to the cove, and they're anxious, and it's a blind curve and all this. So whenever you feel like it's not safe to pass, you know best, right? So you take the lane, you get in the middle of the lane, so it's clear to the driver that they cannot go around you unless they get in the other lane. And if they can't see what's around the lane, they're going to stay back most of the time. So, so you really want to take the lane is a really good one. And when somebody says taking the lane and they put their arm out to turn, then the whole group takes the lane. So, so just some common terms. Railroad tracks is another one. When you're taking railroad tracks, you don't want to take it at an angle less than 30 degrees, or otherwise you will get stuck in the tracks and go down. So we don't want that. So usually they say around 90 degrees, that's definitely perfectly safe. But anything from, 45 to 90 degrees. The more right of an angle you can make, the better, just to be safe, and then you roll right over them. So, any questions about riding commands or bike fit? And
I've heard somebody, and I don't know the correct way to do it, but when you're riding along and a car's maybe coming out of a driveway, is that when people call a car right?
Mhm.
So that's what they're saying, if there's a car coming out.
Cars coming from the
No,
right.
It's not this way, that way.
Yes, yeah. It's not the car ahead of you turning right in front of you. I would say car up. But if somebody's pulling off from a side road onto your road or coming down out of a driveway, I would say car right. And then what I usually do is I try to make eye contact with that driver. Whether or not they can really see my eyes because of the sunglasses, I wave, I throw up my hand, and I can tell they're looking at me, and they'll usually wave back or something. The nice people do. And then so, and then I say slowing. If I see a car on the right and I know that they're coming in hot, I'll say slowing so that everybody else behind me, so I don't cause a wreck behind me, and then I kind of prepare as if something was going to happen here, get their attention, and then I pick up speed as soon as they're looking. So you'll find a knack for doing it for yourself, but you definitely want to not take for granted that they see you, or that they care. They may think, oh, I can get out before this group goes by. Well, no, really, they can't, possibly. So you don't, so anyway. Okay, so that is communication, so common terms. Okay, so one of the things we'll demonstrate in about a week and a half is we talked about making eye contact. So another thing, and I'm going to send you a video link after this is over. So the League of American Bicyclists has some great online videos that are serious. The longest they are is a minute and a half. Most of them are just a minute for each skill. So if you want to go in and see what that looks like to take the lane, or see what it looks like to scan for traffic, there's a video on that. So I'll send you the link. It's excellent. Robin sent it to me. I was hesitant at first. I'm like, man, I don't want to watch a bunch of videos, but really they're just like 30 seconds or a minute and a half, really fast and easy. So for scanning is when you've seen cyclists, they want to like merge or make a move. You could be in a group, in a pack. You want to just, you're riding, you want to look behind you to see if anybody's there, right? And then make eye contact with whomever. I tend to do that too much. I drive my friends crazy. They're like, will you go already? Stop looking back. But no, they don't say that to me. But yeah, you want to look back and make eye contact with that person or that driver, and that indicates to them this cyclist is fixing to do something. They're gonna move, probably move over. But at the same time, and this is what we're gonna practice on April 2nd, when you do that, your bike goes where your eyes do. So if you turn your head and you have your both hands on the handlebar, you're going to go left if you're looking over your left shoulder, right? So, one thing you can practice is kind of lifting your left hand off the handlebar when you look, so that it doesn't tend to pull. Or you can put your hands more towards the center where your stem is, so that, it's less apt to follow you when you look. That goes for ditches, curves, things of that nature too. If there's riprap on the side of the road and you're crossing a bridge, don't stare at the riprap. Okay, don't stare at the ditch, or that's where you might end up. So you just have to you look where you want to go. You look ahead. We'll talk about all of these things I'm talking about. These are 60,000 foot view, bird's eye view of all of the issues. They're each its own clinic potentially. So. When we talk about bike handling, we'll talk about how to handle curves and stuff, because we have a lot of those around here in East Tennessee. Okay. So bike law. In Tennessee, a bicycle has the legal status of a vehicle. So as such, you have the right and the responsibility that goes with having that space in the road. Okay, so they say share the road, yes, but that goes both ways. You know, we have to share with vehicles just like vehicles have to share with us. So, so we talked about riding on the right-hand side of the road, same direction as traffic. We don't ride against traffic because they're not expecting that. We obey all traffic signs and signals, stop signs, traffic lights. In Townsend, they can ticket you. They will ticket you if you blow off the red light, the one red light in town. So we use hand signals to communicate our movements. We equip our bicycles with a front light that's visible from 500 feet and either a red reflector or a lamp in the back under your saddle or on your helmet, visible from a distance of at least 500 feet. So the lights on our bikes, and I apologize, mine are probably not charged because I haven't ridden in a couple weeks. That's another subject. But you know, something bright, it could be flashy in the front, it straps to your handlebars. It could be something in the back that's blinky. So there's two reasons why we use lights. We use lights like in the spring or fall when it gets dark earlier to see by, and then we use lights to be seen. In broad daylight, in the middle of summer or whatever, we always use our lights because that's how vehicles see us. And the lights, and we'll have a clinic on that, high visibility. Deb Duda has volunteered to lead it again, and so she'll help us with that. So to see with and be seen, we use lights, that's a safety thing. We also use high vis. We talk about high vis. There's some booties over there if somebody wants to grab the yellow Bond Trader ones on the top rack. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, especially on moving parts, right? So your hands, your feet, so it's moving. You know, you could put on a bright yellow jersey, but that's not going to catch quite as much of attention as something that's moving and bright. So that's what the research has shown. So definitely a good investment. And we'll talk more about that. We'll have a clinic on what to wear, you know, all the different things that you could use. Cycling is an investment over time. So, so it's real important to invest in the things that you need to keep yourself safe. All right. All right, so we can ride legally two abreast on a road. So that's totally fine, except on paths, you know, obviously on the Greenway, that might be a little problematic. Or roadways where there's, you know, a bike path, you know, like on the side is painted on the road for bikes only. But the thing is, people riding two abreast should not reasonably block traffic either. So if you're riding two abreast and cars come back, I've seen cyclists do all sorts of things. Sometimes they're too busy talking and they don't know it, but they, you know, people shout car back, but they don't hear it. But you should be looking around you and be aware of what's around you. And if a car is coming, single up, you know, tell the person you're riding next to, say, I'll fall back or I'll go up, and then make that decision, the two of you, and then single up so the car can go by. That does a couple of things. One, it lets the car go by, but also perception is everything. My son hates it when I say that, but it's true. If you're going to look like you don't care, that's going to make them angry. And the last thing we want to do is to create road rage among drivers of vehicles who are sharing the road with us. So double up. If you get to a point where there are up to maybe where there are like 5 cars lined up behind you, then it's time to find a spot to pull over. So once I see a car behind me and then I see a second car behind me, and I know it's a kind of a busy road, I'm already looking for a good driveway or pull off where I can pull off and whoever's with me can pull off to let the cars by. So we're not supposed to reasonably impede traffic, just like if we were a tractor on the road or something. You know, they do the same thing. Any slow-moving vehicle, we are slow-moving vehicles compared to cars. So, but we have to communicate this, right? We can't just pull off. The person in front especially shouldn't just stop, or there's going to be a wreck and it's going to be 4 or 5 bicycles back, you know, so I've seen that happen too. So communicate. We do ride in the park. Sometimes we go over to Metcalf Bottoms or we go over to Elkmont, and lots of curbs, lots of traffic, but there's also lots of pull-offs. So at least with the Women's Ride Series, I ask that, you know, we pull off when we get more than a car back and we know it's going to be curvy and not straighten up. So
Jackie, also,
Yes.
When you're riding two abreast and you're trying to go into a single lane, you can point that you need to get in between, and the
Mhm.
person that you're trying to get in front of should yell clear when it's clear for them to merge up, for you to merge over. And that
Yes.
way you're communicating with the people in the group.
Exactly, thank you. So Trish said that when you are riding two abreast, you want to indicate to the person, either verbally and or using your finger, pointing to where you're going to go, and then that person, you know, so if it's me and Debbie riding and there's a car back, you know, we're riding next to each other side by side, I might say, you know, I'm coming over, and I point, and then she'll kind of fall back and she'll say, you're clear, and then I go. So she makes room for me, and me letting her know that that's what I'm going to do, and then that's how you do it incident free. Because what happens is that if you cross wheels, maybe Dana, you could help me demonstrate with that bike if you don't mind. We won't get
I'll
on
have
them.
flashbacks. I will have flashbacks.
We
I'll
won't
do
get
it,
on
yeah.
them, but
Sure.
you might want to stand up to see this.
All right.
So I'm in front and Dana's
I'm in the back.
He's behind me.
Let's
and,
say I'm catching a little speed,
He's got
and I'm
it.
gonna overlap at least to the axle, if not even further. That's all it takes.
That's crossing wheels.
That's enough.
So now we're cross wheels, and oh my gosh, there's a pothole in front of me. I need to swerve over. Bam! You know, if my back wheel
Bump.
hits Dana's front wheel,
I
Dana's
overcorrect,
yeah,
and that's it.
that's
Out
it.
and down.
Yeah. So Dana's gonna go down, and the reason why the back person goes down is because that front wheel has less weight on it than the back wheel, right? So the one that's more
Twitchy.
is the, you know, the wheel that has the less weight, and that's the bike that will go down. So don't cross wheels. I mean, you know, if it's somebody you ride with all the time, some people say, well, you know, I know how they ride. Well, yeah, good luck with that, you know. So, you know, if you're talking or whatever, and something comes up, and you're not, you know, being as vigilant. And I'll use myself as an example. And a friend of mine, we were chatting as we were riding, and the road curved to the left, and a side road fed in on the curve. In that bend, a side road came in on the right, and she thought the road went right and the road went left, and I was on the outside, she was on the inside, so bam! You know, she was fortunate, she was able to pull out of it. I wasn't so fortunate, so I had a concussion, mild concussion, and a fractured pelvis bone out of that from this hub. It twisted my wheel like that, and it hit right there. So, you know, two very experienced cyclists, just, you know, chatting and having a good day. You know, and just things happen. So don't cross wheels.
I was
Just
going
be
up
safe.
the hill at 12 miles an hour. That was it. Like, I'm just barely going up. I'm not going fast. It didn't take much. It did not take much.
Yeah, it doesn't take
No.
much at all. So we will demonstrate that on April 2nd. Questions so far? I'll keep stopping as we have questions. Okay. Yes.
I guess should you generally keep a certain amount of space between you and the other cyclist if you're not like 2x2?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what's your first name again?
Lindsay.
Lindsay. So Lindsay asked, should you keep a certain space between you and the other cyclist in front of you? And so that's all dependent on a lot of things. I'd say put as much space as you feel comfortable. You know, if you want 2 bike lengths or 3 bike lengths, you could. Now some people they will be just right on top of one another, end to end, because what they're doing is drafting. So they're taking advantage of that draft that's created by one bicycle. So the bike in front is putting in 100% of the effort, and we'll talk about this more when we do a clinic on group riding. They're putting in 100% of the work, and the person behind them, because they're creating a slip in the air, is only putting in 70% of the work. And the person behind them is only putting in 60% of the work, and then 60, 60, 60, and then maybe the back person's putting in a little extra. So that's called drafting, and so that's where you see a pace line just flying down the road, you know, because they're taking advantage of that. And then when that front person gets tired, they pull off the front, they indicate that they're pulling off. They might, with their elbow, go like this to let the person know behind them, come on up, if they've had enough. Time to share the responsibility, and then they fall back and they rotate. So it's a rotating pace line. So, you know, if you're pace line riding, you'd probably be closer in order to benefit from the draft. But my rule of thumb is to just ride as close as you feel comfortable. So, and you'll notice that too. When we do the group riding thing, you'll feel that draft. You kind of get sucked up into it. So you've got to keep that in mind as you approach another cyclist, to let off the gas a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to run right into them, you know, which could be disastrous. So we don't want that to happen either. So it takes practice. The more experience you get group riding and with people that you are comfortable with, the easier it gets. And your ability to know how close you want to get and how fast or not to take it. Oh, there they are. They're pace line riding on mountain bikes. Wow, they're tough. So yeah, that's a perfect example. See how the guy in back is not pedaling nearly as much? He's like pedal, coast, or yeah, and the guy in front's really cranking it out. So perfect timing. Thank you for pointing that out.
Scheduled it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I planned it that way. We talked about pulling off. Yeah, we jumped ahead a little bit. That's okay. So 3 feet law. I think, are we all familiar with that? So they're supposed, vehicles are supposed to give you 3 feet when they pass. But that doesn't always happen. I've seen some cyclists do some pretty interesting things though in blind curves. Just taking their arm, pushing it out like that, you know, or standing up on a blind hill so that or putting your arm up like this, you know, if you're coming over a blind hill, so the cars can see you that are coming the other way, you know. So very interesting. So, all right.
Jackie?
Yes.
Pulling out, turning to when saying it's clear. Saying the road's clear to somebody else. Did we go
Okay.
through that?
No, we didn't get to that yet. So.
I don't know if you did that.
So Ann asked about what do you do when you're at an intersection and you're ready to go. You want to make that turn. Some people will shout out clear if it's all clear, but the league says don't do that. And I agree with that because what's clear for you may not be clear for the person behind you, or two bikes behind you, or 3 bikes behind you. So it is each person's responsibility to look and not take for granted just because Janine in front of me said clear that it's clear for me. It just means it's clear for her. So I just don't even say it, you know. So everybody should look on their own and do their own thing. Okay, law be visible. Intersections, we'll talk about this and I'll send out some diagrams. I had a really great article, I've got to find it again, of the most common accidents, bicycles and vehicles. And one of them, you know, is making turns, right? Making a right turn or a left turn. So most of the accidents with vehicles happen at intersections. You could be riding along and you're coming to a stop sign on River Road and you're ready to stop. Well, that car behind you thinks, oh, well, I can pass them and make my turn, you know, and they pass you and they turn and it cuts you off. It's the right hook. There's also one that can happen from the left, from an oncoming, you know. So, so what you can do to help mitigate that is take the lane. When you approach an intersection, come out into the middle of the lane so they don't have that urge to dart by you. I've seen it happen so many times, not all the time, but it does happen. Like in Townsend, for example, on 321, and we're trying to go back, you know, and they're flying, and they want to make a right turn into a parking lot so that they can feed the ducks or something. They'll fly ahead and then cut you off. You know, well, we're not cars, you know, we can't just stop. Even cars can't stop on a dime. So so that's important. So we take the lane. And another thing is you never pass a car on the right. Right? Cars aren't supposed to pass you on the right. We're not supposed to pass them on the right because the same thing could happen. They don't know you're there. The law says, you know, we pass on the left. So we look for other cars or bicycles to pass on the left, not on the right. So they're going to start their turn not expecting you to be there. So never pass on the right. So just think about, you know, if I were driving, what's the rule of the road here? What am I supposed to do? And that's what you're supposed to do. So let's see. Another thing, so if you're going to make a turn, you know, when you are ready to turn, say you want to turn right, you should be in the right lane, right? Take the lane and then make your turn. If you need to turn left, take the lane to turn left. If it's a double lane divided highway, like in Townsend, check over your shoulder, see when somebody's coming, point where you're going, take the left lane and take the lane. don't get all the way over to the side, and they'll try to dart around you thinking that you're trying to let them by. So taking the lane is very important to help prevent accidents in intersections. And avoid confrontations with drivers. Don't escalate. I've heard some stories and seen some things myself. I saw this one friend, he was coming down off of the Old Foothills Parkway, and he's slow at descending, you know, and he was taking the lane all the way down. So the poor lady behind him, she was like enraged by the time she got to the bottom. She rolled down the window, gave him a piece of her mind, and he just listened, and he said, "You're right, I'm sorry." And she just kept on, well, blah, 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 blah. He's like, "I know, you're right, I'm sorry, I won't do it again." He just kept repeating similar variations of that until finally she went on. She was trying to get him, you know, worked up. Don't buy into that. Just, you know, be a good cycling ambassador, because at the end of the day, not only do we want to be safe, but we want other cars to like us. You know, we don't want to make them hate us, so that later on another day, you know, that anger comes out in some other form or fashion. So another thing, we don't have this problem too much, but maybe in downtown or something, you want to avoid the door zone, right? So give parked cars 5 feet, even if it means you have to get out of the bike lane. But check over your shoulder, point that you're going around. If there's a group behind you and you're not by yourself, say car right, car up, heads up. You know, that's what I'll do. Or if you're coming around a curve and there's utility workers and they've got cones out and that slow and stop sign, you know, heads up, you know, or somebody's unloading furniture, you know, and then slow, you know, you can go behind you, you can say, you know, slow down, or, you know, slow down, stop, slow, stop, things like that, so that everybody's looking, they stop their conversation. If you don't get a sense that the noise of people talking around you is going down, you need to shout louder, you know, so always over communicate. Okay. Yeah, avoid riding on sidewalks. If you think about it, every road that intersects the road that's the sidewalk is paralleling is an intersection, right? And didn't we just say most accidents happen at intersections? So don't put yourself at that risk by riding on the sidewalk unless there's some extreme circumstance.
Isn't that illegal?
Right, yeah, it probably is. So I think it is illegal, but some people do it, you know, especially if there's road construction going on. But don't do it just because you think you're trying to be safe, because it's not safer.
So when you ride through Townsend, there's those big bike paths. You don't use those. You still ride on the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for that very reason. And also there's old Highway 73 that parallels 321 for a couple miles, so we'll jump on that to get off the busy road whenever we can.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also back roads that go all the way around, so sometimes we take those too. So, okay. All right. Slowing, braking, and stopping, we'll demonstrate this more on April 2nd. But in riding with a group, if you think about it, every time you hit your brakes, it's more abrupt than if you slowed down gradually just by sitting up more and letting the wind resistance slow you down. So when it comes to slowing, braking, and stopping, you have to think ahead, you know, because if you're clipped in, if your foot's clipped into your pedals, you got to think ahead. There's a stop sign in, you know, 100 feet. I better unclip 1 foot right now and just rest it on your pedal, so that when you get to that stop sign and you hit your brakes to stop, you can put that foot down. So that's a common mistake of beginners, beginner to road riding, is that they'll stop at the stop sign, they're like, oh shit, you know, and they can't get their foot off. Yeah, so it's happened to most of us, if not all of us. So yeah, so you got to think ahead and unclip in advance. Use wind resistance to slow down. And if you stop, like if you use your brakes all the time in a group, it creates that accordion effect. You know, speed up, speed up, speed up. So you want to not pedal so hard that you're going to run up on the person in front of you. Keep in mind of the draft, right? And just sit up more tall in your saddle and let the wind slow you down until you need to start gently feathering your brakes, or some combination thereof. And we'll demonstrate that in a week and a half. So think of it this way: if you cannot stop, you are not in full command of your bicycle. and you should always be in full command of your bicycle. So always, always. That's why you would unclip before a stop sign, for example. A couple other things, and we'll again demonstrate this. Standing and climbing. So sometimes people, when they come up to a hill, they want to stand up because that helps them to get better force and momentum to get up that hill. So we'll talk about that, how to shift down and stuff. But when you do stand, there's like a pause. That time it takes for you to go from parallel to like this, where you can stand. Well, you're in that pause, it's almost like you're rolling backwards. So the person behind you is like, oh my God, you know, because you're about to, they're like running up on you and suddenly you stand and then, you know, and then you roll backwards for a split second. So that's another opportunity for an accident. So things like that, I always say standing, or some people, they'll just go, you know, their hand is like that. They'll flip their hand to tell the person behind them, I'm going up, you know, I'm coming up out of my saddle. And we'll talk about the skill on how to do that later. Let's see. The most, when we think about riding in groups, so incidents in group riding, most of them happen with other cyclists, like my, for example. So what you want to do for group rides, to me, the most important thing, in addition to not crossing wheels, is to be predictable. And by predictable, I mean communicate well, right? So people can predict that you're going to move one way or the other. But even just riding, if you're riding and talking to a friend, especially if the person's new to group riding, you know, if someone's right here next to me, if Dana were here, and I turn my head and I talk to him, where's my bike going? It's going right into Dana, you know, or whoever's next to me. So you want to be able to hold a line. If you cannot hold a line and talk, you don't need to be riding next to somebody. You know, so you hold that line. Sometimes, you know, I want my attention on the road. I'll be talking. I might talk to Debbie for a whole hour, you know, with her, and I never turn my head and look at her. I'm not trying to be rude. I just want to make sure I don't run into her, or, you know, that I see what's coming. So it's okay. It's not rude to not look, you know, because your bike's going to go where you look. You can move your hands in closer to the center stem. That'll help mitigate some of that right and leftness if you're wanting to chat. But be predictable. Don't be the rider that moves laterally as well as forward and backward. Don't be this person. If you find yourself riding alone a lot in a group, you might want to ask yourself if you're doing that, because people don't want to be around anybody that's not predictable. They'll see that and they'll be like, I'm not sure I feel comfortable. I would love to talk to someone, so I'm not sure I feel comfortable riding next to that person. So be predictable, practice it. You can go in a parking lot or somewhere and just ride the white line. You know, can you hold a line? Pick a spot on the road, an imaginary line in your mind, and just hold that line. So,
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Should you be able to do that before you approach a group ride? Because I might be that person.
she asked if you have to know how to do that before you group ride. You learn quickly in a group. I think it's kind of one of those things like in an internship or an apprenticeship or something, you learn on the go, but you can certainly go practice that also. You know, that's just going to make you a better cyclist. So like if you're out on River Road sometime by yourself or whatever, just imagine, you know, that place that's a third of the way in from the edge, and just imagine that was a line, and just, you know, practice that, or go out with a buddy, you know, and just try it. So
You gave me a suggestion one time, look ahead, don't look straight down in front of you.
oh right, yeah.
You told, and you said practice that, and I did, and so I also learned don't watch the bike in front of me, because if they're doing this, then I'm doing that.
Okay, right, yeah. So Ann said, also practicing to look out in front of you and not straight down at your wheel. If you're staring straight down at your wheel, you're not seeing what's coming, and it might cause you to be more like this. I don't remember the exact context, Ann, when I told you that. But, okay, she was doing like this. So I told her to stop looking at her front wheel and just pick a spot out, you know, ahead, and follow that. Keep your focus on that.
She'll tell you what you need to do, like you pass that stop sign. You're supposed to stop. You know?
Yes, so I don't try to embarrass anybody, but you know, if you see something, say something, right? It's only going to keep people safer. You can pull somebody aside and say, oh gosh, it scared me when you did that. Or it scared me when, and just talk about how it made you feel, you know, or what was going on, or that if you were concerned. And that person probably didn't even know, right, that they were even doing that. So here's a perfect example. I'm using myself all the time as an example. I don't want to pick on anybody, because I'm sure I've done it all. I was riding with a group, and my friend Joe was riding with us, and we were on Cameron, which goes around behind Townsend, and it's, you know, one of these things. And I'm trying hard. The group is too fast for me, right? They're too fast for me, so I'm just, all I can think about is ride hard, keep up, don't let them, you know, don't get too far behind. So in one of those curves, you know, I got through the curve or whatever, he pulled up next to me, he said, hey, he said, next time you cut me off, would you at least look? And that was, I only had to be told once, you know, and from that point on, you know, I always look. Now that was kind of, but you know, it was a little brush, but that's okay. It made me look. I've looked ever since, you know, before I move over. He's like, will you at least look before you cut me off? He said kind of jokingly. He wasn't being mean about it. But it's true, you know. So say something, privately or whatever, or tell the ride guide. Because, you know, maybe that ride guide, if you're uncomfortable saying something, they don't know it because they might be not by that person when it's happening. So just let them know. Okay. And that's what we're here for, right? We're here to learn how to ride safely in groups and have fun. So nothing is meant by it to hurt anybody's feelings. So, okay. Be predictable. See something, say something. Crossing the middle line. I had a friend that always used to cross the middle line. I'd get on to him. I don't think I was ever able to correct him from it, but a lot of people would. You say, hey, I like you in one piece. Will you please stay on the right side of the double yellow, or, you know, stuff like that. So you can make a joke out of it, but they'll get it, you know. So, yeah. Okay, so if you're riding in front of a group, that's also a big responsibility, because if you slow down suddenly, the whole group, then that accordion effect kicks in. Just like in cars, if somebody hit their brakes several cars later, eventually that poor car in the back is going to have no response time. So same thing happens with bicycles. And then some things that I've seen happen with groups, they'll stop to regroup. So when we ride as a group, if we get spread out, that might happen on a hill, right? Because everybody's got different abilities, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong if we get spread out. So whoever's in front will find a good spot to pull off and regroup. Pull off is the key. Don't just stop in the middle of the road to regroup, and then cars come and they're like, get out of the road, blah, 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 blah. So don't just stop in the middle of the road, especially at the top of the hill, because the people behind you, they're struggling to get to that place. And then if they have to stop before then they'll never get started back. Or to pass the group to get in front and then stop suddenly. So I've seen that happen, and I've seen that come close to causing accidents in the past. And then some people like to circle around the group when they're stopped because they don't want to unclip. Just unclip. That's just my pet peeve, but just unclip, because, you know, as you're coming around, there could be a car coming the other way, and then they're like, what are these cyclists doing in the middle of the road? So that's what I have to cover today, but it's not just about what I have to say. What are some things that you guys, advice that you have, or things that you've seen in riding with others?
What about maintaining a constant speed?
Maintaining a constant speed?
Yeah, I mean, like going fast, slow down, people behind you. I just rode with somebody that just did that. I was like, surprised we didn't kill each other on that ride.
Right, yeah. So maintaining a constant speed, yes, you want to do that. About constant. I mean, obviously, if you're climbing a hill, you're not going to stay the same speed as if you're on a flat or a downhill. But you do want to be predictable. So think about that. You know, think about your pace. Am I riding a pace, especially if you're in front? Am I choosing the pace that the whole group can do? Or am I going a pace that's too fast for the group and we're starting to get spread out? You know, so you might want to think about that. And another instance too, not everybody can climb the same pace. you know? So that people who are faster climbers, it's hard to, I know it sounds strange, it is hard to stay back, just as almost as hard as it is to try to keep up. And so in those instances, I'll say to the group as a ride guide, I'll say, you know, whoever gets to the top of this climb first, please find a good spot that you can pull off, wherever you think seems good, where there's room, and then we'll regroup. Because I know I'm not going to be that person, but whoever is, because there's always going to be somebody faster than you know. So just get it out of your mind now that I'm going to hold the group back. I shouldn't ride. I'm going to hold people back. I don't want to. No, that's okay. It really is, because we'll just regroup. That's why we ride together, because it's fun to ride in groups. It's, you know, we make great friends, and we don't ride together to drop people, you know. That's not what the Women's Ride Series is about. But on the same token, people that are faster than me, I don't want to hold them back. So I'll say, go do your thing. It could be flat on River Road and they want to boogie it, you know. Well, that's fine. They'll go do their thing. I said, go do your thing. I said, just find a good spot to regroup, you know. And so they'll do that. You know, when I think all is lost and everybody's gone, I round the corner and there they are waiting on me, you know. So it's okay. You don't have to ride the average pace of the group. If your fitness is better, that's just going to drop your fitness over time. Ride your pace, ride your ride, but know that if you're off the front or if you're off the back, you're not with the group. And if the group decides to turn, you know, you might miss it. But on the same token, when you ride ahead, just stop at some point that you think is a good spot and allow the group to kind of, you know, reconvene. So
When you're in a line and you're not able to keep up with the pace, if this person you said was speeding up and slowing down, there's nothing wrong with, nothing to be ashamed of, to fall back and let the next person, because you might be wearing out. So you let that next person take it, and then you can fall back to draft off to that person that's behind you. So you want the consistency is whoever's up front, if they wear out, then we need to be rotating so that one person isn't carrying the whole load. And even if it's the ride leader and the suite, they can stay the same, but everybody in the middle can rotate off like that, and then you're not wearing yourself out.
and give each other breaks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just repeating it for the mic. So Trish was saying that when you're with a group, you don't always have to stay in the same spot. If you're getting tired, or if that person is getting tired, that's why they speed up and then slow down. You know, they can pull off behind and take a break, right, in that draft until they feel rested, and let that other person carry the load. So people who are strong riders kind of have a responsibility to help the group along, because others might be getting tired more often than they are. So they might take a turn at the front a little more often, you know, and that's okay. It's about working together. So thank you, Trish. Other thoughts, advice, things you've seen?
I'm saying too much, but I'm usually in the back of the group, and probably the first few weeks of riding, when somebody with the front would say car up, you've got to pass it back.
Yes.
And if I'm in the back and say car back, you got to pass it forward, because the word wasn't getting. I mean, sometimes there's 10 people and the word wasn't getting to the other end, and the people in the middle were not getting the information.
Right, right. So Ann was talking about passing it up and back in a line. So if there's a car up, if there's a car back and you're in the back, say car back, and then if you're in front of that person and you hear them, don't assume that the person in front of you heard them. Just pass it on up. Say car back, car back, car back, until it gets to the front, or vice versa. Car up, car up, car up. So we always do that. It's better to be redundant than have something happen.
Going back to climbing for just a minute, if you do have to climb and you're a faster climber than the person in front of you, make sure to look behind you before you decide to pass the person in front of you, and also say passing on your left. Don't pass on your right, because a lot of times people will move into the right a little bit if they feel like they're getting a little slow. And in any group, but I've seen it in the beginner groups, when we get to hills, the group generally slows down because it's a hill.
That's right.
And you will always have people, whether it's flat road, hills, it doesn't matter. Someone will always be faster. So just be cognizant of that. If you're the faster person, just make sure that you just don't pull out make sure to look behind you and make sure to say, I'm passing on your left if you're gonna pass people in front of you. So you don't scare them either.
Right, yeah, don't startle them, right.
Yeah.
You know, or I've also seen, so Debbie's talking about passing on a climb. You know, if you're the stronger rider and somebody in front of you starts slowing down dramatically, to plan for that, point, you know, that you're gonna pass so the people behind you know, and then say something, the person in front of you, say, I'm gonna pass on your left. I'm gonna pass them on your left. Or, you know, it's pull over, ride next to him for a minute, and say, I think I'm gonna go now, you know, and then just go, so it doesn't startle them, you know. That happens to me all the time. So, as being the slow one, so, okay. Others, thoughts or comments? Wow, we are like rocking it on time here. It's highly unusual for me. Wow, that's not true. Okay, maybe it is. I was kidding, yes, question.
So are there ever situations where, like, I mean, hills are hard for me, right? So I only have so much ability. Maybe the group gets on a hill and it's like, I'm so fatigued, I can't make it up this hill, or maybe I'm stopping kind of suddenly. Does that ever happen? And if so,
Yeah.
like, what
Yes.
do you do?
Yes, so
Is
if
there a
I,
technique?
yeah, so what I do is if there's a hill that looks like it might be too much for me, is I'll say, I often say this actually, I'll say, now, don't get behind me, don't get stuck behind me, I'm gonna go slow. You know, I might stop all of a sudden and you don't wanna be behind me when that happens, you know, and then people go around me. I'll just say, I might stop, so just go ahead and go around me, just in case, you know.
And as Carrie says, there's no shame in walking.
No.
And there's no shame in walking,
There's no
right?
shame in walking.
I guess to
Not at
that
all.
point,
I've done it.
is there usually, like, if you're in a group and there's a hill or something, like, is there always sort of a way around somebody, or should you always make space, like, in case my partner ahead of me is in trouble? Should there always be some kind of space where I can pass that person? Or vice versa?
Yeah, if you're in front and you're the slower one, I wouldn't take the lane. It makes it harder for people to get around you on the
Okay,
right
so
or
you
the
should
left.
go to the right.
Yeah, and it depends where you like to ride. I tend to like to ride on the left, and so people pass on the right. I think of it. It can be either. You could tend to go to the right, the slower people on the right, just like a car, right? And then the faster traffic passes on the left. Alternatively, if you're in the front, you can peel off, like if you were in a pace line, point, you're gonna go and then fall back and let the rest of the group go and then fall behind. Does that make sense? So I think either way would be fine. Just communicate your intentions.
What do you say if you say you're wanting to slow down because you're fatigued? So you're gonna do the go behind, the
Yeah.
go off, but what do you say? Let them know that you're doing that?
I would just say, she asked, what do you do if you know you need to slow down on a climb? I would just say, y'all go around me. I'm gonna be slower on this hill, you know, go around me. And don't think the person is faking false modesty. Go around them, you know. It's not gonna hurt their feelings. They don't wanna cause an accident. So I would just say, go on around me, I'll see you at the top. Or just say, I'll see you at the top, go around me. Or I'm gonna fall to the back, you know, I'm gonna take the back. And you know, you'll notice ride guides, a ride guide doesn't have to always be in the front. A good ride guide can lead from anywhere in the group. So don't think don't think the ride guide has to be in front all the time. That person's gonna get tired, first of all, you know. So just kind of be cognizant of that too. It's okay to pass the ride guide. Maybe they're struggling, you know, so, or whatever, vice versa, so. Yes,
I think I would just
Brenda.
encourage people that are truly in the beginners group,
Mhm.
that some of the things that we're talking about sounds really scary as a beginner.
yes,
And the beginners group is just so wonderful. We stop, we take breaks, we communicate, and don't let the talk of like, placing off stuff keep anyone from becoming a part of the beginners group.
yes. So thank you, Brenda. So Brenda is addressing the beginners out there that are watching this video to not, listening to all of this can sound very overwhelming and intimidating. Don't let it do that. The beginners group is awesome. It is so awesome. People that aren't beginners ride with the beginners group, and then they stop coming until the next beginner group starts. So I'm not sure how that makes me feel. I'm just kidding. But seriously, don't. You learn this over time, and the only way that you get better at group riding is to ride with other people. And so, especially the beginners, they take it nice and easy, very casual, and practice these skills with Avi, Ford, or whoever the beginner ride leader is. So, so don't worry, it gets better every time.
So for the first ride, how do you determine if you should be in the beginners group or another group?
Okay. So
Or
when-
you're in between? you
Yeah.
know?
So, how do you say your name?
Egrid.
Egrid. So
Mhm.
Egrid asked, how do you know which group to start in? So should you be in the beginners if you're new to us, or some other group? So that question goes for all the groups, I think, not just the beginners. I would start with the group that is one step back from wherever I think I need to be. If I think I need to be with the B group, I might start with the C group first. And if I have never ridden in a group before, I would start with the beginners. That's where I would start, hands down. Because here's the thing, people who are fit can certainly maintain the pace of a faster group, but that doesn't mean they have the skills that go with that in group riding. And serious accidents can happen when you join a group just because you think, oh, I can average 15 to 17 miles an hour without having, or whatever it is, 12 to 13, without having the skills that's needed to be with that group. So especially with e-bikes too, it's not just that person's skill, but you know, if you have an e-bike, you might think, oh, well, I can just buzz by everybody and go up this hill and wait, you know, and so I don't need to be the beginners. But if you've never group ridden, you should start with the beginners. You know, and so say after 1 or 2 rides or something, you'd be like, okay, I think I've got this now. And if Abby, you know, you just have this conversation, or just stick with the beginners. It's just for a few weeks, and then you can progress from there. So I know a lot of strong riders who started with the beginners that were fit to begin with, but they stayed with beginners and now ride in other groups. So it's like you don't know what you don't know, right? So I started taking master gardening classes. I garden, but you know, I wanted to know where the gaps in my knowledge were. And so that's what the beginner group gives you. You find out, oh, I didn't know that, you know. So, and sometimes it could be something very, very important. So, other questions or comments?
Don't say I'm sorry.
Don't say I'm sorry, right? Yeah, don't ever apologize for your ability, you know, for being, you know, not, if in your mind, inadequate to the task, or that you're holding people back. Just, or maybe you're having a bad day. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you had a long work week and Saturday morning at 9 a.m. is just too early for you that particular Saturday or whatever. Don't apologize, just move on with it. Now, if you cut somebody off, you might say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And that person will be like, no worries, just don't do it again, you know? But other than that, don't apologize for your ability. We all have different abilities, and we try to make up for that by having as many different groups as needed. So, and that happens when people volunteer and step up to help assist with groups, which we'll talk about on April 2nd. So, another thing, I guess, since we're all here, one thing that we do in the beginning of rides is we check in with the ride guide, so we keep attendance, because it's important to know who's with the group, right? What if they don't make it back, you know? Is this not an instance of, oh, we only lost 2, no problem, you know? Yeah, right? You know, we want 100% return rate. So we check in, the ride guides or volunteers will have an app on their phone, and they can sign you in instead of passing around a piece of paper, and make it real efficient. So come early. You know, I said 15 minutes early, but I was reminded by a friend how time management challenged I am. So just yesterday. So really, let's just come start check-in a half an hour early before the ride. Because realistically, it takes 15, sometimes 20 minutes, because especially if you're talking with friends, to get your bike ready. You know, even if you put air in the tires before you came, you know, and then, and you don't want to, or you might end up with a flat or something before the ride even starts. And then there's got to be time for the ride guide or volunteer to talk about the route. So we're going to roll sharp. I really want us rolling sharp. If it's a 9:30 rollout, we roll at 9:30. You know, if you're pulling in at 9:30, I'm sorry, you know. So it's just what's fair to everybody else. So, other thoughts, comments?
Do you ride every Saturday?
We do. We have a ride every Saturday now through, well, April 2nd through October. And nobody makes all the rides, counting me. You know, I'm gonna miss 2 in April because I'm going on a scuba dive trip.
Nice.
And yeah, so things happen, right? There's graduation out of town or something, you know, everybody's got something that comes
But
up.
if it's really bad weather,
If it's really bad weather, oh yeah, so if it's really bad weather, rarely do I cancel a ride before we even start. I just, you know, use your best judgment. If you're in Knoxville and the weather's terrible, you can just decide not to come. Now, it might be perfectly sunny here in Maryville, so you can text me. You could say, hey, is it clear there? You know, what do you think? You know, and I'll let you know just how bad it is. Sometimes it will be raining here and not at Coulter Bridge, just a few minutes up the road. So, or vice versa. In those instances, I might say, the weather looks iffy, we don't know, because it'll be like, at night it might say 90% chance of rain, and then the next morning it pushes off and the whole morning is perfectly clear, so that's why I don't cancel the night before. I'll just say, let's meet at Psychology Bicycles, we'll have a plan B, and go from there. And then just use your judgment, do I really want to get out in this, you know, or not, so. 9 or 9:30. In the spring and fall, it's kind of 9 or 9:30-ish because it might be really cold, you know, or freezing rain or something like that. So, yeah, we might delay our rollout. The only thing we don't do is we don't start in the rain. So if we like say get here or to our starting location and it's misting and drizzling, we might just sit in our cars or in the pavilion or in the shop for 15 minutes and then roll out when it clears. It takes a strong person to be motivated to put their bike stuff on and roll when it's raining, you know, or pouring rain right at the start. You know, once you get going and your core is warm and all that, and it rains while we're out, is not nearly as big of a deal because you're already warm and actually might sometimes it feels good, you know. So high winds is the question. Do the winds cause issues? The winds cause issues for bicycles with wheels that have this deep rim. So these are for aerodynamics, right? So they catch the wind, and most of the time it acts like a kite, and the wind pushes you. So people with these wheels go a little faster. But on that same token, in a 20-mile-an-hour crosswind, you don't want to be next to that person because they might be blown into you, or you know, depending, you know, where they are. But yeah, so the deeper the rims, the more of an issue the wind is. But
So y'all go up to like Kings Cove, places like that, sometimes they have wind warnings. You still ride when it's like that?
I haven't ever had a wind warning. Usually at, you know, 8 in the morning, usually it's not that windy. Usually those winds pick up a little later, but in the 8 years we've done this, I've not had to cancel a Cove ride due to winds, so. Anything else? So if you think of other questions, feel free to text me or shoot me a phone call. I usually have my ringer off because I teach computer classes off and on during the weeks. So just text me if I don't answer right away and I'll call you back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this video. Anne's going to post this video on our, I still have power, yes, on our new YouTube channel, and I'll send out the link. And I mentioned a knowledge check. So this isn't a quiz or anything like that. It's just going to be probably a digital handout or something for you to quiz yourself. You know, just kind of look at it and see, oh, did I get that right? You know, and then just let me know when you feel comfortable with it. Say, hey, I'm good with the safety clinic. We're not taking grades or you know, tracking it. No. So I just want to know that you did it, and you did. I see you all here. You did it. In fact, we should, yeah, just do the knowledge check and zap me an email and let me know that it's done. So, and then we're good. I'm not being the safety police, but at the same time, the idea is I just feel comfortable that everybody's, you know, more grounded in the content so that we do have safer rides. Okay. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.